Coco Gauff loses her first match at Wimbledon against Diana Yastremska, who, this is a huge shocker to everybody. Coco Gauff is the number 2 player in the world. Let's not forget that. Coco Gauff just won Roland Garros and a dramatic match against the number 1 and best player in the world, Aryna Sabalenka, and she outplayed her, particularly in the last 2 sets. Coco Gauff looked like the only people that should beat her are Sabalenka, maybe a Swiatek still, maybe, Pegula also lost, that's also a big thing, maybe a Navarro, maybe one of those players. And she lost in the first round to Yastremska, who I had heard of maybe a couple times through random draws, but I never thought she had any chance to beat Coco Gauff. How does this happen? Okay. One thing that we always need to remember in tennis is just how different the surfaces are. Coco Gauff has won 10 titles in her career already as 21 years old. She has not won a single grass court title. And to be fair, there's like 2 grass court tournaments that every player plays, really. Okay? Maybe 3 if you squeeze it in. But look, grass court tennis has like mostly died. That's what makes Wimbledon so special. And, Queens or Halle or Berlin before then as well. But since grass court tennis is so rare now, remember Australia and the US used to be on grass court as well. Now they're both on hard court just because it's way easier to maintain. There's not going to be as much time played on grass. But you think to yourself, grass, even though it's the surface with the least amount of tournaments, it's also the easiest to get accustomed to, just because of the way the surface is and the slipping and sliding. Grass is much more forgiving. It's not as hard as hard court obviously is, and it's not as physically enduring as clay, where sometimes you feel like you're running in quicksand. But Coco Gauff has never been able to fully master grass, and it's still a huge trouble for her. And it's not just that, it's also the high of winning Roland Garros. It goes back to what I've said and what I've believed for so long. Tennis is one of the most emotional sports in the world, and you can see that in the way that players react after winning an emotional match and losing an emotional match. It can either give you the biggest high or the worst low. What did we see with Carlos Alcaraz last year? Alcaraz won Wimbledon after winning Roland Garros. He was on top of the world. He was the best player on earth. Everything was going his way. He closely lost the gold medal match to Novak Djokovic in the Olympics. And look, it's the Olympics. You are representing your country. It only happens every 4 years. So some tennis fans, grade the Olympics higher than other tennis fans do just because of it's the Olympics, it's not a slam, it's not a Masters 1000, it's optional, there's no ranking points, there's no money, who cares, right? But some it's, look, I have Spain on my shirt. And Carlos Alcaraz is clear that way, and he cried at the end. Clearly it affected him, and he crashed out of Cincinnati. That's when he ended up banging his racket after losing to Gael Monfils. And he crashed out of the U.S. Open, losing in the second round. He crashed out of Shanghai. He somehow came back. He won China. He won the China Open to Jannik Sinner in the final, which was impressive. But Carlos Alcaraz just showed his level. But then he crashed out in Shanghai, and then he crashed out at the ATP finals as well. I don't even think he made it to the semifinals. I think he was round robined in the ATP finals. But clearly, the entire year was hampered by the fact that he lost in the Olympics after he felt like he was really close against the guy who he had just beaten on a surface that is his surface, even more than grass is on clay. And that affected him. And same thing with Djokovic, who was already injured and hampered. But the high of winning the Olympics as well clearly also affected him because he crashed out of the U.S. Open. And, Shanghai Masters, he did make it to the final. He was just outplayed by Jannik Sinner, who is the current number 1 player in the world, even though I think Carlos Alcaraz is the best player in the world still. But anyway, the emotional high of winning Roland Garros clearly got to Coco Gauff. Chrissy Everett was saying in the broadcast before this match that Coco probably had to go back to New York to do a bunch of media. She was probably being interviewed by every American outlet that you can probably think of. She felt like she was the queen of tennis after winning Roland Garros, after coming back from a set love down, after receiving the joy and adulation which she rightfully deserved on TikTok and on social media for overcoming what she did. For Aryna Sabalenka saying what she said after the post-game matchup, if you remember, that was a huge deal. It's like, Aryna Sabalenka, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Coco just won. She was just better in sets 2 and set 3. Don't make excuses about yourself. Sure, you can say that you didn't play great, but honor how great that she played. I don't know if that got to Coco's head, but I'm glad that Coco actually chose Sabalenka to be her hitting partner when some of the top players got to hit on center court before the actual championship started. But Coco, 45% first serve percentage, that that ain't gonna cut it at all. She only had one break point opportunity, and she did break, but that was it. And yeah, two aces, 9 double faults, very sloppy with her serve. You feel for Coco, just because you think to yourself that everything that came from winning and the highs got to her, and maybe now she's experiencing lows, because not just Roland Garros, she made it to the final in Italy and she made it to the final in Madrid before Roland Garros happened, where she won the championship. She was on a great run of form. She had been on as great of a run of form as any player in tennis, but then crashed out in Berlin in the first round against Zhang Wenyu. Wang Xinyu, my mistake. Wang Xinyu. She crashed out at the beginning, and it didn't look good for her, and it doesn't look good for her right now still. And Coco will be back, and she'll be just fine once the season transitions back to hardcore. And in the U.S. Open, she'll be one of the 2 or 3 favorites, along with Sabalenka, for sure. So she'll be fine for the long terms, but I really want Coco to be a player who wins all the slams and who is able to win all the slams. But it doesn't seem like grass is her service, and it'll be like a thorn in her spine. We saw it with Federer for a large period of time, where even though Nadal was Nadal when it came to clay, independent of that, Federer didn't seem like he was great on clay at all. It just, that surface didn't really acclimate well for Federer's skills, and he struggled. But he finally broke through in 2009. He completed the career Grand Slam, and he did win a Roland Garros title. So he'll have on his record that he won a major on every surface, of course. But for Coco, you want her to win a major on every surface, and she's more than able to win an Australian Open. I think she'll do that one day. But will she win a Wimbledon? Clearly, she's good enough to win a Wimbledon, but will she acclimate herself to grass enough? Will she not ride the emotional high enough of competing late in Roland Garros, which I think she'll do for a long period of time? Will that happen? I don't know. And it's not a good feeling at all, losing in the first round when you're the heavy favorite. Coco, by the way, was supposed to be on center court. She was moved to number 1 court because the Zverev match was moved back to center court after it was suspended yesterday. Wimbledon's, ridiculous rule of, matches have to end at 11 is crazy. We saw that in the first night. Taylor Fritz's match ended at 10:20. There was still 40 minutes left, maybe 45 minutes left. I forget however much it was, but they're like, we're going to halt play right now and not even start the 5th set. What? They are so strict about it that they will end matches 40 minutes before 11, even though there's another set to be played. Can we at least play until 10:55? That's a whole issue that I believe that Wimbledon needs to work on, but it's just the way that Wimbledon is. And, maybe that's what makes it special. Maybe that's what also, in another way, makes it really annoying. I don't know which side you're on. But regardless, Coco, I wish you the best and I wish you well, but maybe this is a lot of work that she's going to need to put in, and just how can I make myself the best grass court player possible? How can I make sure that I don't hang with people in the first round of slams? I destroy people in the first round of slams because I'm so much better than them. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But hey, biggest surprise of Wimbledon so far, even with Holger Rune. This is by far the biggest one, even with Jessica Pegula as well. And hey, let's see what the draw looks like now, because it is wide open.